When we talk about the effects of tech on a marriage, they are far reaching. There are endless options for how tech might distract us from marriage these days. We've got our phones, our other devices, we've got social media, Netflix, YouTube, gaming, gambling, checking the stock market or the sports scores. I mean, do you need me to go on? I'm sure you know exactly how tech can affect a marriage because most couples are struggling with it, which is why we're going to share some tech boundaries your marriage needs today. But before we do that, I want to let you know about a resource we have to help with this exact issue. It is 17 questions to ask about tech. These are questions every couple needs to ask in order to get their tech use under control so it's not harming the marriage, but it can actually be helping it. You can eliminate the pain points you're experiencing with it. So make sure to check out this helpful resource in our show notes today. So, Dr. Kim, let's talk tech. Are there certain areas that are very common for couples to struggle with when it comes to technology?
Yeah, I think there's probably a lot, and there may be, I'm just going to 3 or 4 that I see probably consistently. I think the whole idea of screen time, how much when we spend time, I think it's not how much time it is how much, but also when we do it. When if you're supposed to be having a conversation with your spouse and you're picking up your phone every 5 seconds, or distracted by something else technology wise, that becomes, I think, a problem. And figuring out how to do that, how do we do the tech or the screen time? I think the whole thing with social media and online relationships, talk a little bit more about that probably later, but those connections when we're using social media, boundaries, those kind of things with other people of opposite sex, those kind of things. I think that is a factor because we've seen so many relationships rekindled or start through technology. And so I think there's a heightened, I think we're on higher alert on that than maybe people used to be. But then we begin to see some of those things. And so then I think it affects a marriage relationship. And kind of tied in with that in a little different way, I think is trust around what we share. Do I share something about Nancy that I haven't asked her about, and then she's upset because I shared it? Or maybe I share something personal about us that she would rather me not share. One of the things that was when we started in social media that Nancy posted a couple of pictures that just weren't her favorite. We put it that way. And so the issue was, before we post anything, she gets to look at it, which is great. That solved that problem. And so I think that those kind of issues. And then I think too, that kind of came because of a couple of couples I've worked with in the last month, is this whole thing with online shopping. And, like I said, some nights I can't get through to the front door because of the Amazon boxes. Probably was a little bit of an exaggeration, but his deal was, it's so easy. And I think sometimes people don't realize, and I think there's an addictiveness to it too. And so I think that whole thing, how do we handle that with our, does that meet, if we got a budget, is that working within our budget? Or if we don't, do we need one in that area? Because, all these things, it's so easy to justify and so easy to shop and click and not having to, most of the time you don't even have to pull out a credit card because you've already got it in there. And you just click and then you just wait a day or less, and there it is on your front porch. And so I think that's an issue too. So I think that, screen time, how we do in social media and the online relationships, the trust about what we post and not post, and then that whole thing with the online shopping and how that can affect us in a negative way.
Oh, man. Yeah, those are tough ones. Gosh. And it's interesting because as you talk about those, it just kind of shows how it can be so problematic, even if the content isn't a problem. Online shopping is not bad on its face. There are some things online that are bad, point blank, but online shopping's not one. It's very convenient, but it can become bad. Same thing with the timing. Like, it's not like, oh no, you should never, ever look at your phone. It's about how you're using it and how you're coming to agreement with your spouse. So there's a lot to talk about here.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So those are some of the common ones. Are there any of the different applications of tech that you see are really harming marriages these days?
Well, I think that goes back to social media in so many different ways. That creating, one thing I see a lot in the teenagers, especially young teenage girls, is the social media, these unrealistic expectations, comparison. And I think that goes all the way through. I see adults doing it also.
Yeah.
Well, they got this, or why do they have this and we don't that? Have you seen their new house?
Mm-hmm.
Do you see that they both drive new cars? And maybe they borrowed them for the picture. I don't know. But, I think we put a lot of stock in what we see. So I think that part of it, the unreal expectations, the comparisons, and then again, the connections with former boyfriends, girlfriends, or new people. And, what is that going to lead to? Well, it could lead to something really dangerous. And could be but jealousy or mistrust, those kind of things that can be really tough. And, I don't want to be looking at something on social media that Nancy overlooks my shoulder and she said, who's that? Or what's that? Because one, I want her to know that, she's first and there isn't anybody second, and that, I don't want her to have to worry about those things. But I think I've seen so many times when a spouse will just pick up their spouse's phone where they just left it and then get out of something and they see something, think, why in the world was my spouse there? Why was he there? Looking at that, why is he doing those things? I think dating apps can cause temptation. I heard a story 2 weeks ago about a person out of town on a trip for a few days, got on dating app where he was and presented himself as single. So, I think there's opportunities for infidelity there, whether it's physical or emotional, whatever. I think that's a huge problem. Then I think the virtual reality, online gaming, and how are we doing that? Are we doing too much of that? Is that the way we're escaping? Are we neglecting responsibilities because we're doing that? Are we decreasing the quality time with our spouse because we're so caught up in those kind of things? And I see that happen. And then just the whole thing with pornography and what it does to a marriage, what it does to unreal expectations or addiction, harming the intimacy. What is when a wife says, why are you looking at that when you have me? All those kind of things go with that. So some of those things I think are really, really harmful. Not that some of those things have not been around before, probably all of them in some way, except maybe the gaming and stuff, that it's just more accessible. It's easier. And at times, I think we think it's easier to hide. And so those kind of things can really cause some problems.
Yes, for sure. Yeah. And that's why I'm so glad we're talking about this, because these are kind of things that, like you said, sin nature has always existed. People have always had temptation, but because it's so accessible and because you can get anything in the world on your phone, it can take you down some really rough roads.
Absolutely. And I think, what I tell people, if you've gone there, then we got to work on getting you away from there. But you haven't gone there, don't. Don't. There's not going to be any benefit of it. And so stay away from it. Don't do those things. But it can certainly be tempting. And I think that's where you strengthen your marriage. You don't want to do things to hurt the trust in your marriage. And when you're tempted, you turn away into God instead of yielding to that temptation.
Yeah. Yes. And so, and I think there's a lot of, you could put some practical steps and parameters around it. If you take our, 17 questions to ask about tech, that's going to lead you to some practical, some tangible, some specific steps, because this is so broad, because there's so many different ways this could be affecting a marriage. So we know that, technology is a tool, so it makes our lives easier in a lot of ways, even though it is also complicated in a lot of ways. So at what point does it become a problem in a marriage?
Well, I think when it interferes with quality time, we talk about how important that is in a marriage, to have it consistently. So if your screen time is replacing your quality time with your spouse, what does that do for you? One, you're going to miss some connection there, but it could over time lead to your spouse feeling maybe neglected or abandoned or something like that. Because we used to spend that 30 minutes every evening, just the two of us, just talking and catching up with each other. And now you're on your device or you're doing a video game or something like that. So definitely that would become a problem. When it creates secrecy, hiding, when you're hiding your online activities, your purchases, your relationships. And so all of a sudden you've got mistrust and if it, depending on what you're dealing with betrayal. And so that becomes a problem. I don't want to keep things secret from Nancy. I don't want to hide things from her, because when I do, or if I did, one, I think should eventually find out. And two, then we've got not only what I hid, but then the fact that I hid it. And so it just causes so many problems that you don't need to deal with. The addictive part of it, I think we have to be aware of. Excessive tech use leads to addiction. We're seeing more and more research come out on that. And I think it's an escapism. And, I think we all want to have our ways that we just kind of wind down and stuff, but it can become addictive and be a problem. So putting some boundaries, parameters around those things, and then just avoiding responsibilities. Maybe you're not dealing with issues in the relationship because you're putting everything on hold and putting whatever it is that technology has got you ahead of all those kind of things, which doesn't match up with God first, spouse second in any way at all. The comparison thing, I think just that's where it can really become a problem. Unrealistic expectations, comparisons. And so we get dissatisfied or unhappy, or we see, did you see what her husband, so-and-so's husband did? And while you were sitting on the couch watching whatever it was you were watching, or did you see so-and-so, what her new outfit and how she did her hair and you're there in your sweats and you haven't put on makeup in a week, or, I don't know. Just things like that, if they be harmful to a relationship, those things just don't need to be a part of the relationship. I think you embrace the person God gave you and love that person and don't let these other things enter in. I think the infidelity part of it, certainly that becomes a problem, whether it's emotional or physical. And I think something I've seen a number of times the past year is people being in an emotional relationship with someone through technology and not considering adultery. But my feeling is anytime you're getting needs met outside your marriage that God intended to be met in the marriage, then you're crossing a line there. And it's just, I think you play with fire there. And so some people feel safe. Well, I'm in Oklahoma and they're in Maine. Okay. But that doesn't mean you can't still be in an emotional relationship with someone. And just because you're not in where it could turn physical, the emotions because it's going to take it away. You're going to go there. And I've seen too many people do it. And so they're finding excuses. So on vacation, and they're outside acting like they're taking a walk, but they're texting or connecting with this person emotionally far away when their spouse is right there with them on vacation and they want to be. I've even had people that have admitted being in just a room with their spouse and their family, and everybody may be watching something, and so they're on their phone communicating with this other person. I mean, that's just not good. There's nothing good that will ever come out of that.
No.
Out of something like that. And then I think when if it's becoming a source of frequent arguments or resentment or frustration, then that becomes a problem. And it's your problem, the one who's doing it. You're the one who's got to address it. It's your spouse is just letting you know, and maybe not in the best way. They're letting you know that this is really causing a problem. And so it's taking that serious. Those are some of the things. And I think depending on couples that are listening or people that are listening, you probably could list other things. Those are the ones that I've seen in counseling. And I think that probably are more of a common problem when it comes to technology in so many marriages.
Yeah, it's interesting because some of the things you mentioned I hadn't really thought about, but there's that nature of being able to kind of hide on your device because it's a personal thing. So it's kind of secret. There's a secrecy there.
Yes. Yeah. And I don't know that we've had, I guess there's always ways people could have secret people or hide things like that. But it's just like you said earlier, Lindsay, it's just so easy now to do those kind of things. And we have to figure out how to deal with it because it's not always like all of a sudden this is not going to be available. Most likely this is going to be available. And there's going to be more and more as we get into AI and virtual reality and all these kind of things that we're going to have figured out how to deal with.
Yeah. Yeah. So, okay. So let's start talking about some specific parameters on this, because I think you're right. Like you mentioned a minute ago that maybe the spouse isn't bringing it up in the best way. And I think we've all probably experienced something like that. You know, if you're tripping over the Amazon boxes, you're probably saying like something not very proactive, maybe a little more reactive,
Yes.
you know, if you get to that moment. And so, and I know kind of my temptation would be like, you know, like, oh, are you not going to engage with us? Like, oh, wow, look at dad on his phone again while the kids are, you know, trying to talk to him. Like there's better ways. So let's talk about how to open this conversation about boundaries. What are some of the boundaries you think couples need to have?
Yeah. And I think
for
you're
example,
right. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. I was just going to say specifically when it comes to time spent on screens for entertainment, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. One, I think you've got to say, can we talk about this and set a time to talk about it? Because usually it happens like you were saying, it's when the event happens or something, if somebody's doing something, well, then you're already ticked at them. So it's not going to come off very like, hey, I want to make our marriage better. It's like, you're a jerk. And we're all, your family's here. Why in the world are you on your device? You know, so no, you don't want that. So when it comes to on entertainment, I think there should be places that are in a home that are screen-free zones. Maybe it's your bedroom. Maybe it's at the dinner table or where you guys eat together. That make some places in your home that really are screen-free, and everybody knows it. Your kids. You know it, and everybody honors that. And so I think that narrows down where some of those things can happen for entertainment or whatever. And I think most of the stuff that we do online, we would consider entertainment, whether it's watching reels or scrolling on Facebook or Instagram or something like that. I think screen-free times are important. I know couples that, like from the time they're home in the evening, maybe it's a 2 or 3 hour period, and all the phones are somewhere else. Definitely during meals, because I think that's, you know, those times are so valuable. I think I'm so glad that we did family dinners together most nights when they were little. We did every night, and as they got older and had some conflicts, it didn't happen every night. But those things I really value, and I think our kids value, because it was a time for us to have fun together, but also to talk about things and to bring things up. And so then I think those things, meals or any family activities, just okay, these are screen-free times. The entertainment is the people in front of you, not what's on your device somewhere. Prioritize quality time. In other words, make sure you still have that quality time. And so date activities are just that time of sitting down at the end of the day and just sharing your day with each other. I think also that there's times that you just do unplug, maybe for a day together. You both decide that. Maybe it's when you guys are, I don't know, maybe you decide you're going to paint a bedroom together or something like that, you know, and just do that. Have, you know, I started to say throw paint on each other. We only did that once. But anyway.
Sounds messy.
It was, but it was really fun. You know? But yeah, because I think you miss out on things like that. And I'm not saying throwing paint on each other is fun, but we laughed about it and we can still laugh about it, you know, and so you miss out on things. Yeah. And then I think just continue to update, because things are going to change with technology, even the entertainment part of it. And so you're continually saying, is there something new we need to address? Is there a new boundary we need because this is available now in technology? And so, and that you both agree on them. And so I think it probably is going to be at least some type of an ongoing process. Or maybe you see, you know, maybe it hadn't been a problem with your kids and all of a sudden they hit an age and they get their phones. And so now you've got to think about those things for not only the two of you, but for at least one of your children. And so what do we need? Do we need to do a few things different because we're going to ask our child to do different? Not that there can't be different things, but I think when it comes to technology and presence with someone else, I think that applies to everybody. You know, you can't tell your child you can't have technology at the dinner table and then mom or dad's are scrolling through something. You know, it's like, no, we got to all not have that so we can engage. So anyway, I think those are some things that can help. Basically, it's just figuring out in your family what's taking away from time together, and then that you're using something else to entertain yourself or to preoccupy yourself or to escape, and you're missing out on those times face to face with each other.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that you said that we got to agree on the boundaries, because I think there's this kind of feeling that you have to just kind of like tell each other how it is, or kind of like what you were saying with the kids, like, here's how it's going to be, kids. Well, if you tell them how it's going to be, you also have to observe that. So there's a sort of a collaborative process here of getting tech to a place where it's serving us. We're not addicted to it. It's not taking over, but it's in its proper context so that we're still able to have the good quality relationship. And so it's not just kind of like, okay, you have to stop doing this because I don't like it. It's more like, okay, we need to work together. We need to be a team. We need to come through this process and agree on boundaries. Because I think a lot of the applications that we've talked about can be so problematic. Like you talked about the shopping, like, okay, that sounds like a budget problem that needs to be dealt with.
Yeah.
Or I know online gambling is a thing that a lot of people are dealing with, or other sort of kind of addictive things, or then the secrecy that you brought up. These are all really harmful, and they need to be brought into the light and then dealt with together, because you can't just say, we have to control this. Like, you have to get to the root of this and work together on it.
Absolutely. And I just don't think we've done a very good job in it. I mean, yes, it's probably been 16 years since first iPhone came out or something like that. But just think for iPhone went from when it first came out to, I don't think there were any apps for a while.
Right.
As you go through that. And then we have a phone that we can do the same. Before you had to, if you're going to do something, you had to get on your computer, but now you've got it worked in your hand, and then you've got an iPad or a device like that. And so I think all those things really, and the technology continued to develop so quickly that we never really stopped and thought about, what do we need? Do we need some boundaries about this? Because I think it was fun. It was new. It was exciting. And then I think we have come to realize that this is taking the place of people. And then all of a sudden you get AI, and that's your relationship. Yeah. And the social media and all those kind of things. And so I think it's just taking the time to say, how is this? What do we want for? And probably a good idea would be to say, what are the main things we want in our marriage? And then to look at, okay, where is technology bumping up against this? Where is technology keeping us from doing these things? Sometimes if you approach it that way, it's easier because you've got your really important goals about your marriage to start with. And then you look at what's getting in the way of us getting there. And then honing it down to what the things that you're talking about with technology. And that may help you get to a point of togetherness of saying, oh, I really didn't realize it's affecting us so much. Because I think a lot of it happens and we don't even realize it. We don't realize how many times we look at our phone. Or how if there's a moment of silence that here comes the phone, because we can escape into that. So it's something I think we all have to work on. I don't think any of us do it great. I don't think we work on it. I don't think we're there where we need to be completely with it either. I think it's a work in progress for us, because with what I do and then counseling and what Nancy does with real estate, we are on our phones a lot for different reasons and for good reasons, but then it's easy to stay on them or to get that habit of, just other things. And there's nothing wrong with taking some time to scroll through stuff. I mean, just put some parameters around it, and don't do it when your spouse is sitting right in front of you, looking at you. Yeah. Yeah. Look back and put your phone down.
Yeah. Well, I can't tell you how many times, for the podcast, I'll get on Instagram to check out somebody, like somebody we've collaborated with, or pull a quote or something like this. And then I open up the app and I'm like, what was I doing? Because my mind, when I open it up, I just kind of go to this other place where I just find my thumb scrolling, and I'm like, no, wait, I was using this for work. And then it just quickly can turn into not what you meant to do with it.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think we probably both do that, but I've seen Nancy do that sometimes. She's going to say, hey, do you want me to look up what the weather is today? And I go, yeah. And I'm sitting there and I said, so what's weather? She goes, oh, because something was on when you got on. It was something, so she got into that. So it's so easy for us to do that. So easy. And it really does take some intentionality, I think, for us. And then beginning to reap the benefits in our relationships and in our marriage that, okay, this person, this skin and bones, real life person in front of me brings me a lot more joy, and can bring me a lot more joy than what I'm doing on those devices.
That's so true. And it is also sort of an art and a strengthening that we need to develop the ability to pay attention. Kind of what
Yes.
we we're just saying about getting distracted. I can't tell you how often I've done what Nancy's done. And you're like, is my brain okay? Because it's so used to being distracted. And I think there was a point a few years ago where I realized, because I had kind of gotten used to the pacing of things on a cell phone or, whatever, I didn't have the ability to pay attention for long stretches of reading. And so I realized I had to kind of reclaim that, because the way that our entertainment or our technology doesn't really teach us that. It doesn't help us with that unless we're very intentional. And so in a relationship, we have to be that intentional also, because we won't have the ability to pay attention and be present if we don't cultivate it.
Yeah, that's really good. I was listening to somebody, I can't even remember what it was, but basically we were talking to someone that was going to speak before a group, and this person knew this group, and they said, "Oh, by the way, keep it at 12 minutes." They go, "What?"
Oh, wow.
They said that we've done studies, and we lose them after 12 minutes. So don't talk longer than 12 minutes. Okay.
It's a tight one.
Well, what I would say is maybe you're not very interesting, but that was just my bias in it.
Just turn it into 12 reels.
I would hope we could keep somebody, but I understand what he's saying also, that's kind of, we do be conditioned to things like that.
That's true. That's so true.
Yeah.
So, okay, what are some boundaries that you and Nancy have in place with your screens and phones in general?
I think our connection time in the evenings, we've just made that where it's no distractions. So when I come in the nights I'm at the counseling center, or when I've been in my office and come out, we spend that time together every night. We don't have our phones like that. In the car, that was something we were really both not doing well with. Whoever was driving the other person was on their phone. Well, and we realized some of our best conversations always happened when we were driving, or something we laughed about, or at least if you're listening to something, share it with each other, so that has been kind of an off. And I think if we're together and we're both distracted by our screens, and we just kind of realize that, this is some time we could spend together, we're trying to be more aware of those times, and not like if we go Sunday afternoon, we went out on our patio and we were hanging out, and one of us picked up the phone, and then we just realized, okay, we were just going to use this time together, and now we just got distracted by our phone, and so we just put it down. So part of it is being aware of that. The other thing is that we've always had shared passwords. Nancy can get into anything of mine, so can my grandkids. So and they do.
Sure,
they know my passwords completely, and so, which is great, because if there was a temptation, I'm not going to do anything that my grandkids are going to see, or that Nancy, and so I think just having that openness, I think, has really helped us. And I know couples that don't do that, and my question is always why. Why there shouldn't be anything on my phone that Nancy can't see. Yeah. Whether it's what I've looked at, where I've been, who I'm texting, who I'm getting emails from, all those kind of things. And so I want to be totally open with that. She's totally open with that. That's nothing that we ever, in fact, I know I have to remember her passwords, because she has this habit of using different ones when she signs up for something, and then she can't remember them because she's not on a app like LastPass where it remembers them. So I have to remember all hers, and then mine are on LastPass, and the grandkids know probably all of ours. So if grandkid around, then great. If not, we got to figure it out. But those things have all helped us, I think.
Yeah, that's really good. Those are really good, and really pretty simple ones too, that you just agreed on them, figured out what mattered.
Yeah, it is. It's not rocket science, but it is being willing to let go of something that's become a habit, to pick up something that's a better habit.
Yeah, that's so true. Yes. So, so as you mentioned some of the boundaries that have worked for you guys, are there any other boundaries you've seen help the couples you've counseled?
Well, the couple I talked about where he had the box of Amazon, they sat down and did an online purchase agreement. And it wasn't, and she was able to help him see some of the things I'm buying through Amazon now, or as opposed to buying at the store. So some of those boxes are, your shaving cream came today or some things like that. And then to say, okay, what are the ones that are not things we consider necessities? And do we need to put some boundaries like that? And so I think that's really good. Obviously, boundaries with opposite sex need to be there. I just don't think you need to be friends with the opposite sex, someone you've dated before, or really, things like that. There's too many dangers there. And so making sure you've got those boundaries in place there. Privacy boundaries. Well, okay, I'm not going to post anything that concerns us or you until I've run it by you. And then tech-free days. Both of us try to have one of those Sundays, kind of when I always do it. And if Nancy's not working Schoenhauser or something, it is for her too. But we try to have those times when they're just no tech. And it's amazing sometimes. It is weird sometimes when I am slapping every part of my body trying to find my phone and realize, oh yeah, I docked it. It's in the charger right now. But I think it's good for us. I think it's to do some of those kind of things. So those are some of the things that I think can really help couples. And I think those tech-free days, if you can find a day where you're both really going to have time together and you can say, this is going to be a tech-free day. And I think you'll, if you do that once or twice or 3 times, you're going to really learn to value those days because we don't realize how much technology has control over our lives until we get away from it. And it's pretty cool when we can get away from it. And I know we can't get away from it all the time. It's too much a part of our culture, too much a part of what a lot of us do. But it's us being in control of that instead of it being in control of us.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, as we're saying this, we know that Awesome Marriage is completely tech. It's founded on the internet. It's the whole thing exists on the internet. We don't live in the same state, the same town. We wouldn't even be able to do this without tech. So it's not to rail against tech, but there is a place for it. We've got to make sure we have it in its proper place. Yeah. And I know when I do like tech-free days, I don't do a whole day, but I do like parts of days. And I always consider it kind of like a retro day. I'm like, oh, have like a 80s day. It feels very freeing to not have any device. And I notice a difference in the way I kind of think about things. My mind doesn't, have that little urge to like, oh, let's quick Google it, answer and figure it out. It just kind of lets your mind calm down when you're not going straight to the device for every thought you have.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there was a time in so many of our lives when that wasn't a part of our lives. And I don't remember that if walking around in circles thinking, what am I going to do? We figured it out.
Yeah. We had a great time.
Yes.
Well, this has been a really helpful and practical conversation, Dr. Kim, about boundaries around tech. And I do want to make sure to mention too, that we have, in addition to the 17 questions every couple needs to ask about tech, we also have a better boundaries guide and an online course for setting boundaries in your marriage. So if anything in this conversation has made you think you need to have boundaries conversations, make sure to check those resources out. They're going to be linked in our show notes, just because we want to make sure you have the tools you need to apply the things we've talked about today. So as we're going to wrap up this conversation, Dr. Kim, do you have any final piece of advice for our listeners today?
Well, it made me think again about what for Nancy and I and our family. And I think I would just encourage you to give some thought, maybe sit down together. Where is technology hindering your marriage in any way or family life in any way? And take some steps to do that. And there's, we're not bashing technology. We're just saying we need to get in control of it because sometimes sometimes Nancy relaxes by taking 15 minutes and just scrolling through stuff and laughing at reels or something like that. I mean, there's nothing wrong with those things. And certainly if you're going to be on technology together, be on Awesome Marriage and be growing your marriage or do one of our YouVersion plans together. If technology has control of you, what do you as a couple need to do to take back that control and do things that are going to help your marriage and eliminate the things that aren't good for your marriage? And I think those are going to be huge steps to help you putting the boundaries around technology that's going to help your marriage.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great piece of advice for us. If you've heard anything in this conversation that's made you think you need to take some steps, follow up by using those resources we've got linked in today's show notes. We've got a lot of things to help you with this. And in fact, next week on the podcast, we have Arlene Pelicane speaking about similar topic. She is amazing. She's written, I think, 5 books about tech and the family and marriage and kids, and just some really great help and insight to help you learn how to be more present and engaged in light of the landscape we're in right now as far as it comes to technology. So make sure to tune in next week for that, because I just really appreciate and respect the work she's done on this topic. So see the show notes for all of those resources. Tune back in next week to hear Arlene. And as you go, make sure you have a great day and do something awesome for your marriage today.